Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Studio Life. I am Mark Nicholas, right here at Manhattan Beach Studios. So today I want to talk about vMix and utilizing remote guests, or remote footage, I should say. It's not just about a remote guest. There are many ways of adding a remote. Now this could be a caller, an interactive dialogue. It could be remote video feeds or content. It could be a remote production. It could be anything. And you can add all that into your vMix pretty simply. Now, today we're going to talk about 6 ways of adding something. So let's say that you're running a production and you've decided to bring in an outside source. How might you accomplish this? And also, what factors might you use in your decision? Now, here at this studio, we see all kinds of productions. One day it could be a simple vMix call, where we have a remote guest, and other days it might be bringing in outside producers, directors, executives. There are days where we're bringing giant classes together, including things that look like Zoom galleries or that are Zoom galleries. We might be tying into very large audiences. We might be sending extremely high quality content to another vMix, or have another vMix sending extremely high quality content to us because we might be keying it on this end. We don't want something highly compressed or at a low frame rate or something like that. We want the very best. We might have reporters in the field where we need to talk to them, but it's not really a two-way communication. It's more we want to feed them some information so that they could give us the report. There's not one solution that meets all requirements. And of course, there are pros and cons to everything. Now, I have to say vMix is one of the smartest pieces of software that we've seen. It creates audio mix minuses for vMix calls and vMix to vMix calls and for Zoom through vMix calls. That's really smart stuff. It used to require more than that. It used to require us to have to think about the way the audio is going to be fed. Who's going to hear what, when, how, why. Anyway, this is a great day. It's beautiful outside, and so let's just dive in.
Here we go!
So let's start with the vMix call. Now, vMix call is bread and butter. This is really where vMix shines. The vMix call allows for full back and forth, full communication in both directions. And it does 3 things. The first is vMix automatically creates the mixed minus. That is to say that it automatically removes the caller audio from the return audio feed. In other words, the caller on the other end doesn't have to hear themselves after the program feed is done. If they did, it would be a terrible echo. It would be absolutely miserable. So instead of having to create a custom mix or use an audio engineer, vMix handles this. You don't even have to think about it. As a matter of fact, if you use remote calls and you didn't even know about this, then vMix wins because you didn't have to think about it. Second and third are 2 things that make vMix calls pretty incredible. And that's that it allows you to pick the audio feed and the video feed that's being returned to the caller. Now, this might not seem like a big deal, but it's a huge deal. On the video side, you might send the final output or the program feed back to the caller. It's pretty normal. You let the caller see what's on air, but you don't have to. You can create a custom camera angle that allows that person to simply see everybody in one fell swoop. You can create a grid of people that might include remote callers. You can combine that. You can create any custom layout that you want, create it as an input, and send it back. You can add all kinds of other information too, and some of this is easy and some of this is very complicated, like if you're going to harvest the vMix XML file to pull time, like whether someone's on air or an input is live or something like that. But this can all be done. You get to pick what the other person sees. This is really helpful if you have a very important VIP guest and you want to treat them extra special. Maybe you'll give them something branded. I use this all the time with outside producers and directors. Give them something special that makes them feel like we value their presence on that call. And so they're not just seeing something, they're seeing exactly what they want, what we want them to see. Now, you can also send custom audio back as well. Now, this is also very special. You can create custom audio buses for the callers, whether it's one bus for all the callers or multiple buses, one for each caller. You can do whatever you want to do. Now that means you can do a couple different things. So for instance, you can let them hear each other or not. You can allow them to hear certain movies or give them some downtime. You can feed them instructions. You can have talkback directly to them. You can do anything you want to do. In addition to that, you can create a custom green room where they can all talk to each other and they're not on air. You can create a custom audio channel so they're all able to speak. And with a simple shortcut or two, you can take them out of the green room, place them into your production, and then you can put them back into the green room. It really is very fascinating what can be accomplished with these custom streams. So this is all quite perfect. Why wouldn't we want to use vMix Call? Well, there are really two reasons. The first is there needs to be satisfactory internet on both ends of the connection. The remote caller is actually using the upload bandwidth. Now, not all internet providers provide quality upload bandwidth. And as a matter of fact, many of the top internet providers provide terrible upload bandwidth. And they do it on purpose. By allocating almost all of their bandwidth to download, it means Netflix plays better. Downloading files plays better. Everything plays better, but the uploads. And so if you are uploading, you really should pay attention to which providers are going to provide quality upload speed. Now, believe it or not, I'm here in LA, and in my area, there was only one, which was Frontier. Frontier Fiber allowed really high quality upload speed. Now, how does this play in? Well, it plays in when your remote caller thinks they have good upload speed. And when that happens, they'll tell you, hey, no problem. I've got great internet here. We're all set. And then all of a sudden you bring them on and the call crashes. And of course, it's not a unique problem to vMix, but it is a real problem. You might have people at their house that are also using other bandwidth in their space. Like you might have people there on Netflix or something else tying up bandwidth that you need. They might be at that moment deciding to upload final files to the cloud. They might be backing something up. All of these things really matter. Now, this is always much, much worse in a hotel. It may look like you're getting quality download and upload, but you're really not. You're sharing that connection with a lot of other individuals in that hotel, and that thing is just getting pulled in every different direction. Calls from hotels are notoriously horrendous, and as a result, let's really not, I don't even know what to say. Remote callers in hotels is not my favorite thing. But secondly, I want to talk a little bit about the setup. vMix Call, when it's working, it works perfectly. When it doesn't, it's often the cause of only one or two things. Number one, it might be that the person who's calling in did not authorize the use, approve, or allow the use of their camera and microphone. It's a pretty common problem. Second, they should be on Chrome if they're not using Apple, or Safari if they're using Apple. If they're not, they could have real problems. And we send these instructions every single time. We have a form, but if they don't read the form and follow the instructions, which most callers don't, then we can have a lot of problems when someone on an Apple device is trying to use Chrome or they didn't authorize their microphone, that kind of stuff. Now, vMix has a top secret thing. I don't know why this is top secret. I think it started in beta. It stayed in beta. It's called advanced.vmixcall.com. When we do that, what we're doing is we're giving them the option to have a bunch of extra settings, including choosing your microphone, choosing your camera, and a screen sharing. So that's what Advanced vMix Call allows us to do. This helps us troubleshoot a bunch of things. For instance, if someone has multiple microphones or multiple whatever. So it helps. But there are a lot of days where we can't figure it out. We'll get a call right before the show because no one's proactive in terms of making sure everything works, and we can't figure it out. At that point, we simply get a lot of stressed people involved. It's not the way to go into a live production. And we've had situations even when it worked the day before, but it doesn't work that day. I don't know why. I know it's a peer-to-peer thing. It's not supposed to be going through an outside server, all of this stuff, but I don't know why. Bottom line, it's incredible most of the time. And then lastly, what makes it not incredible is it compresses. And it can compress in all different directions. It can lower the resolution and the bit rate. And so, yeah, for 99% of callers on shows, it's perfect. It's better than every other source that's ever been out there because it does it all automatically. But for those reasons, it's not always my favorite. Number 2, vMix to vMix. Now, vMix to vMix calls are very similar to vMix calls with one major difference. There's vMix on both sides. Now, in exchange for putting vMix on both sides of the call, vMix gives you better resolution. I guess they just treat it in a more favorable way. So there are times where we're looking for full HD quality and we'll switch to a vMix to vMix call. The other concerns are still there. There's not a guarantee that everything's going to be perfect. You still have the bandwidth issues. You still can have some setup issues. We find it to be very reliable overall. Our biggest problem when it comes to implementing this solution is that everybody doesn't always have PC devices. We work all the time with people who are using Mac devices, in which case they're really not able to install vMix, or they have to jump through a lot of hoops. And if you're not familiar with vMix, you can have some issues. vMix still requires capture devices and audio devices and interfaces and things like that. It's not automatic. We don't want vMix to vMix calls for people who are not capable of running vMix. And so that is an issue. Now, as quality has improved overall on some of the other sources, we've had people demand vMix to vMix calls less. We still do it for big productions that require full HD, and we find it works quite well. Number 3, let's talk Zoom, in particular, Zoom into vMix. Now, this is through a plugin that vMix has created, so I would always encourage you, if you're going to use Zoom through vMix, to take a couple of minutes and make sure your system is working and that everything is set before going in. Now, this is pretty amazing. By connecting Zoom and vMix together, vMix can actually see all of the participants. And so you can pick which participant you would like on the screen at any one time. Now, it does not allow galleries, although I guess you can create a gallery if you have enough participant inputs, but that would be a mess. And as a result, you can go and say you can create 5 Zoom inputs and then select each particular participant that you want. And then you can do some other things as well. For instance, you can decide if you're going to listen to all the audio from the entire Zoom call or just the audio from that particular participant. We used to use a software called Zoom ISO, and that's what that software did. We paid a lot of money for this software just so that we could get Zoom calls tied to with their audio onto our system. It utilized NDI in order to create the interchange between the Zoom ISO system and vMix, and it worked a lot of the time. There was some troubleshooting. I will say Zoom integration is incredible. Downsides. We trip over this sometimes, especially if we're not the one hosting the original call. Now, in order for Zoom integration to work, there has to be an approval to stream or an approval to record. And while I think there may be ways of setting that up later, once a call is started, I can say this has caused us to run into some issues. If the call is started without that authorization and people have already started logging in, there have been occasions where, for whatever reason, our vMix system would not tie into that Zoom. Sometimes we'll have to experiment and say, we'll go to record authorization or stream authorization. We'll go back and forth saying, what the hell's going on? Why can't we get onto that Zoom call? So our biggest concern going into a Zoom into vMix production is whether we can connect. So we connect early, and I always try to have fallbacks. I haven't needed them recently, so maybe a lot of this stuff has gotten worked out. But if for whatever reason we can't get onto that Zoom call, we have a problem. We have to build another Zoom input in, and we have to build a mix minus back out. We covered mix minus a few minutes ago, but now we're doing it manually. So if you can't use Zoom into vMix, you got to know how to build the outputs. You may need a special sound card for that, whether it's, not special, but meaning something to use as an audio output. You may need the cable if you're running this into another computer system. It's a pain. And we've had to out of a few occasions, but really not a high percentage anymore. There's a massive advantage when it comes to Zoom into vMix when it comes to music. But I can tell you, Zoom hates music. It's not built for it. It's a meeting platform. So when you're using vMix into Zoom and you're all in one system, we found that the music is handled pretty well. We like it. You want to make sure original audio is on. You want to go through all the steps. Echo cancellation is off. Everything that it takes in order to make the audio as high a quality as possible. That means using earpieces and headphones wherever possible, that kind of stuff. And as a studio, we get all that right, so that's not a big deal. But Zoom outside of vMix is built to strip music away. For whatever reason, what happens when it comes to music audio is unpredictable when it comes to Zoom. It's simply not a high quality platform for that. It's the same thing coming in the other direction. Zoom video and Zoom audio is designed to be compressed. It's designed to be reliable. And we find its reliability to be greater than vMix's reliability. It can work on much worse internet than vMix requires. So that's awesome. But it works by really knowing how to ramp down the data that's being pushed through. It knows how to strip quality away in favor of staying live. So we use it when we absolutely need to as a better solution than vMix call when we know we cannot go down. So we like that. That's really cool. It's just as interactive as vMix call. It's perfect. It's a really remarkable system. So you sacrifice some quality in favor of reliability. You also get larger groups. You have an infinite number of people who can now be placed into your production. Lots of really cool stuff. Now, as an aside, many of our vMix projects also want gallery inputs. We do this by connecting another computer that has Zoom on there. We'll have that come in as another participant with the gallery view. We'll take that gallery view, pump it into our vMix system, and there's another input. That can be anything we want it to show from that Zoom call, including gallery or some individual participant or something like that. As a matter of fact, because we have so many vMix licenses, we may actually have custom looks that we're able to create from that system as well. It comes in as an input. We use it. Amazing. And that's how we handle Zoom galleries or some of the Zoom custom looks. Otherwise, inside of vMix, we just create what we want and just go with it. It really is quite amazing. So that pretty much wraps up my discussion of Zoom. And let's move on to what I'm going to call a feeder system. Now let's take a second and talk about feeder systems. Now feeder systems are the traditional way that video was handled, meaning there was a playback system. Something could feed the video into the switch. That was a hardware switch typically, but it could just as soon be a software switch. That way you have a dedicated operator working that video stream. For remote callers, simply the video would come into that remote system and would come over to vMix. vMix would then create a mix minus based on that, essentially taking the audio from the program feed, subtracting out the audio from the caller, and sending it back. Of course, you can do much more complicated stuff than that, but in general, that's what the mix minus is, and you would send it back to the other system. You can do this pretty simply with a couple of wires. It might be an HDMI out of the starting computer, for us converting it into an SDI and plugging it into our vMix system, depends on your capture device, and an audio connector out from your sound system back over to the feeder computer. Not that hard to do, but it requires a little bit of setup time. You'd like to have this set up in advance to make sure it works. Now, one advantage to this is we get to use Skype. I know it's so weird to say. We don't use Skype for anything. I really don't like Skype. I'm not a fan of Skype at all. It's like scammers and stuff like that. I'm not really into that. I don't get it. For whatever reason, the networks do like Skype. So we were just on a broadcast remote, and we were told our two options were SRT or Skype. So we love feeder systems. Feeder systems are also our backup. We know that if for any reason we had a problem with Zoom inside of vMix, I don't like to run Zoom and vMix on the same system. That means I'm working with too many monitors. I'm tying my monitors up from the production just to monitor Zoom. If something goes wrong in one platform, I may not notice it because I'm paying attention to the other platform. For me, if I'm bringing Zoom or any other platform in outside of vMix, I like it to be on another computer, another notebook computer that's off to my right. I could just see it and work it, or I can assign somebody to see it and work it. So it's the same connection. Picture out, audio back in, set your mix minus, everybody's happy. Now, you also have the ability to utilize NDI. Let's not think you need cables for everything. You could, for instance, take a screen capture of that and feed it over via NDI. You can take an NDI audio feed and send it back, or you can send a program feed back to Zoom with the mix minus set. You can do it all. Honestly, because so much of what we do is time sensitive with clients looking over our shoulder and people who are going to get very angry, I don't tend to do that. I tend to just simply plug the two wires in. I have the picture that comes in, although I may use NDI for that from time to time, but my audio return is typically going to be via the aux out on my mixer directly into the feeder system computer. But the reason why we use it, it's sky's the limit. Anything that you want to play can come from that feeder system. Any video, any caller, anything you want. And feeder systems are the top way of handling graphics, complex graphics. Anytime you have a hardware switcher or you want somebody to help assist with graphics on a vMix. If you've got people typing in tickers and all this other stuff, maybe just set them up on a remote computer. Give them vMix on the remote computer and just play it over green, or send it out via an alpha channel or out with an alpha channel or something like that. Utilizing a second computer is so incredibly easy to do and rather economical, especially if all you're talking about is, Skype or Zoom or vMix graphics or something like that. It's just so incredible to use that we always have one ready. So that's our fourth option. So we've covered a few things so far. We've covered the vMix call, covered the vMix to vMix call, we covered Zoom into vMix. Now we've got a feeder system. And now let's talk about option number 5, remote RTMP video. Now, this one gets a little bit complicated. Imagine that somebody out there in the field is able to stream, and instead of streaming to YouTube, you want them to stream to you. Now, vMix is not built to receive RTMP video. It's not an RTMP server. And this gets a little technical. And I don't know how to set up an RTMP server to receive that video, or even what I would do with it once it got there. But this allows you to work with outside streamers who are trying to stream directly over into your vMix platform. And so this may be somebody at a show or something like that, and they're going to stream to you. Now, there are outside services that do receive that RTMP and will convert it into an IP network stream, meaning something that you could log into with an IP address and pull back down as an actual video. Like, I think it's related to VLC. VLC has network streams, and you can type in the IP address and there's the video. It's coming right there. vMix can receive network streams. Now, this is a really cool option if somebody is somewhere and they have an RTMP encoder. Now, let me tell you how we have used this. One of our favorite tiny little mini devices is the Teradek Cube. The Teradek Cube is a little baby encoder. Well, I don't want to say baby encoder. It's baby because it's small, but it's a powerful encoder. It sends a lot of stuff. Now, I know it's not the newest model, of course. You've got Prism and stuff like that from Teradek. The little Teradek Cube could stream to RTMP, but it was always seen on Teradek's server. And Teradek's server could assign an IP address to that video. And then we didn't need to have a decoder on the other end. You can establish the input as a network stream, type in the IP address, and you can pull that video in right there. Very cool. Many times with that little Teradek device, we could give somebody the Teradek device, get the Teradek device onto the network, and have the thing streamed into Teradek, and then there it was. We didn't need firewalls. We didn't need port forwarding. We didn't need anything. We could just go, log in, watch the video, and it was part of our show. So very, very cool. And now let's talk about SRT, Simple Reliable Transport. Nah, it ain't simple. I think it's the opposite of simple. It is secure. And secure is the opposite of simple. It can be secure. It can be encrypted. Reliable means it doesn't fail. Transport means transport. Now, these words are special words. What we're looking for here is quality and reliability. You're not sacrificing the quality of the product. And so what you need is, instead of something that processes it, you need a tunnel. SRT is a tunnel. What you put in on one end, you get out on the other end, provided you have enough time to let that thing travel all the way across. So it's full quality, provided you have the time. We'll get to the time in a second. But full quality means it's now up to you. You decide what the quality looks like. So if a project needs 8 megabits per second video, H.264, you pick that. Now you have to make sure you have enough time to transfer that, but you get it. If you can handle 265, maybe you can get away with 4.5 megabits per second, or, and maintain the quality, or you can stay at 8 megabits per second and double the quality, or however it works. Bottom line, the quality is what you put in, you get out. Why would we use this? Well, maybe we want to reuse that video later. There's a lot of stuff we might be considering in terms of that production. Maybe it's not just an outside caller, but it's something that we may tie into a documentary. We may be recording that as an ISO. All kinds of reasons why we might need really high quality video. We might also want to green screen it, where we want the original, or as close to the original quality as we can do. Now, of course, H.264 and H.265 are already compressed. And so you may be putting something that's compressed into the tunnel, but at least it's not getting chewed up somewhere along the way. Like if the bandwidth starts to fail, that the resolution, the frame rate, all that stuff gets stripped away. No. At this point, what you put in, you get out, provided there's enough time. So quality is all there. Time means that you create a delay. You pick a delay, a latency, and you say, we're going to give it a little bit of time to get there. Now, on the transmission end, that time includes looking at the receiving end and saying, did it get there? And if it didn't get there, it goes back and says, hey, give me those extra bits. We got still something to send back. And then it goes back through the tunnel in a way that can be reconciled so the video stays full quality. Sometimes you need more time, so you add latency. Maybe you're going to add, instead of 200 milliseconds of latency, maybe you're going to 500 milliseconds of latency, or one full second of latency. But the truth is, you're getting the quality as long as you've got the internet on both ends. So now if someone's in a hotel room and they're barely pushing something out, utilizing SRT with a delay may at least get you the call at a quality that you desire. It's pretty amazing. Now, there are a couple of setup issues here. One is port forwarding. This is kind of a baffling thing for many of us. It's not that I don't understand it, but I can't figure out how to do it myself. Port forwarding means that the SRT caller, which is one of the sides, is going to connect to another side's IP address. But you can't just go through the firewall directly into the heart of a computer or a decoder. You need to allow it to happen. That's what port forwarding means. It means that this device is going to reach through every security measure that you have into the decoder. Now, that decoder can be the vMix computer, or it can be, in our case, most of the time we don't use vMix as a decoder. We use a KiloView. We have the D350, I believe. One of the reasons why we use the D350 is because we port forward to that IP address for that device. And that allows us to not have to worry about somebody accessing our vMix computer, which has a bunch of stuff on there that really should not be available to the entire public. And we like to keep that behind some safety precautions. So we port forward on our end. So our outside remote is the caller. We are the listener. vMix has the ability to go directly into SRT inputs. You can have an input that's an SRT, and you can designate that as a listener. You can also designate it as a caller or a rendezvous, in which case now you can link up the two sides. Once you're linked up, the video can transmit and you can receive. Now, vMix can also be an SRT transmitter. Now, this is a topic for a different video, but it's incredible. We just ran a volleyball tournament where we were sending 5 distinct outputs to a volleyball TV, which was overseas out in Finland. In order to do that, we didn't want to run 5 unique systems and 5 separate switches and 5 of everything. So we ran 4 of the courts, the 4 that were basically just single camera views, into one system. We combined it with graphic scoreboards that were fed directly to those channels from an outside source. And now we had scoreboards over those inputs with the audio from those inputs, and each one of those is assigned to one of 4 SRT output channels. And there we were the caller, and we sent it out to their listening channels, and we were able to send 4 distinct links that way. So even though we only have 4 external outputs, we have 4 additional SRT outputs that don't relate. You can send something different, a program feed to a monitor or a multi-view to a monitor on one end, tying up your external, and still have 4 SRT outputs that can go anywhere in the world that you want it to go. So maybe we'll do a video on that at some point. But now you have vMix as an SRT listener, and now you receive the video and you can make it work. Latency, again, you need to extend the latency if you're having problems with the reliability of that call. The great thing is that you can measure whether or not there are issues with that video transport, and you can make adjustments. One of the other super important options when it comes to SRT is its ability to sit in the sky and act as a listener, a universal listener, and it can connect multiple callers to what it listens to. In other words, we talked about port forwarding. This can be a huge problem, especially when you're remote, when you're on somebody else's system, especially somebody else's system who is secure. So let's pretend for a second you don't have control of the router, and the caller is now going to send to you and you can't port forward. Well, the solution is, what if you're both callers? And normally that means you're going to butt heads. But if there's a service in the sky, now you can build a server if you have the wherewithal. I don't. Or you can utilize a server that's already there that acts as this universal listener. Now both callers, the remote video and your receiving station, act as callers. You call into that server. When I say call, meaning you're going to go into vMix, you're going to say you're the caller for a video input. You're going to set the IP address of whatever you're given along with the port for whatever you're given. If you're given some secure protocols for encryption, you're going to type those in. That will connect you to the server, and then that server can be configured so that anything coming into that port goes directly to you who is dialed into that port. It's an amazing solution, and essentially an infinite number of connections can now be made via SRT. So there are a lot of cool options. Again, 90% of what we do is through vMix call, but not network broadcasts, not a lot of not things that require additional gallery views, things like that, and definitely now things that require a higher quality video. Last point is true security. We have clients that do not allow anything to go out that is unencrypted or in any way subject to the possibility of theft or outside viewing. That includes companies that produce many major movies, things like that. They're very, very sensitive. So let me talk about one more aspect of SRT, which is it is not interactive. It's not interactive like vMix call or Zoom. It can be a much more clunky thing to utilize. especially when it comes to being able to talk to whomever's on the other end. SRT is often used for things that do not require both parties to be talking to one another actively. In other words, reporters in the field would be a perfect use for SRT. High quality, a little delay is okay, it can be encrypted and secure, but you still need to tell them when to go. So a lot of the time now, people are utilizing cell phones or some other form of communication in conjunction with the SRT. Although I believe LiveView has a very high-end system that allows for some talkback, but it's high-end, thousands of dollars. I think well over $10,000s of dollars. So when we're utilizing SRT, particularly when we're sending something to a news station, we still want to hear the producer tell us when it's okay to start and stop. So we need to be able to build their talkback into the ears of either the producer or the talent. We utilize a simple cell phone connection with a USB-C into an XLR. That is a listening channel, but it means that they could talk on a cell phone and we can simply pipe it into our mixing console and assign that to whatever the talent is listening to, assign that to their IFBs, their in-ear monitors. And now we have all the communication going out via SRT. It's being received by their system, whether it's vMix or any other system in the world, and they're able to talk to us and we're able to pipe that into ears. We do that the opposite direction when we're receiving vMix. Sometimes we'll have a cell phone and we'll simply talk to them. As long as we can take that cell phone and pipe it into their ears, we're able to get the SRT signal in and we're able to provide some form of talkback out. There are other systems. You can utilize systems by Clearcom. You can utilize all kinds of different ways of communicating out. But a lot of the time these days, even major networks are going to the cell phone system, cell phone into IFB system, and it works wonders. I hope this helps. Options 1 through 6, from vMix all the way to SRT, with a little bit of zoom action, some feeder systems, some good stuff here. If you've got questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I know this was quite the video. I hope it gives you a sense as to what's possible, and we hope to see you next time.
3, 2, 1.